So, what if I told you guys that today, Thursday, November 20th of 2025, is the 2-week countdown to the release of Metroid Prime 4 Beyond? If I'm being honest, there's a more than great chance that most of you guys already know this because you're Metroid fans or you're fans and followers of my channel, so you're hopefully pretty up to date with everything happening surrounding this game. And it's crazy to think that we are 2 weeks away from the release of something that we have been waiting for 8 years. And I know that some people might make the claim that we've been waiting for 18 years since Metroid Prime 3 ended, but truly, I'm marking the countdown as something that started when the game was first revealed at E3 2017, back when the Nintendo Switch was brand new, and this was one of their early big promises for their console, a new Metroid game, a fourth Metroid Prime game, something we never thought would actually happen. And so, when we go back to that time, 2017, it's been 8 years that we've known Metroid Prime 4 was a title being developed by Nintendo, started with one team, moved back to Retro Studios in 2019, and now here we are, 2 weeks away from this game releasing, a game that personally, as a big game fan and a Metroid fan, is probably going to be a life-changing experience, at least as I relate to the hobby of gaming. Now, of course, over the past 8 years, since the game was first revealed, I have been theorizing like crazy, and that includes during the dark times when we knew nothing until the game was finally revealed to us last year in 2024. I have found a ton of different ways and angles and persuasions of looking at Metroid Prime 4, both as an idea during the dark times, and then as an actual product with gameplay and stuff to dissect once it was revealed last year. And so with the game 2 weeks away, I'm a very busy guy nowadays. Some of you may have noticed I'm not making several videos a week like I used to. I get one out every week or every other week usually. And so with 2 weeks to go, I wanted to take today to kind of discuss one last big theory that I have based on everything we've seen of Metroid Prime 4. Again, after the reveal, based on real footage and real gameplay and real trailers and real knowledge from Nintendo and Retro about this game, I have one last big theory that I want to spend time in a video discussing with you guys. So the theory that I have is something that I have mentioned amongst many videos over the course of this year in 2025. So it is something that if you've been watching any of my Metroid content this year, you've probably heard me say and spend a little bit of time discussing. But again, I want this video to be a true focus only on this idea, the evidence I've seen, and why I personally believe it could be what happens in this game. And this theory revolves around the planet Tanamaar, which we know is the very opening of the game, which we saw during the Nintendo Treehouse in the April 2nd Nintendo Direct, and the planet Viewros, which we know the bulk of the game is going to take place on, and the bulk of the footage and the trailers and the details that we've learned surround. My theory about these two planets comes down to the fact that I personally believe that planet Tanamar and planet Veros are actually the same planet. And obviously the only way that would work is if time travel is actually a part of this game, which is something I've theorized ever since we got the title and we saw the trailer, the first reveal of the footage last year in 2024. We saw this artifact and this black hole looking logo, and the title was called Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. And the more you sat and thought about it and reviewed that footage, and then plenty of other footage we've seen since then throughout this year, I've put these pieces together, man. And I do think time travel is very likely a part of this story. And through that, seeing what the opening confrontation between Samus and Sylux looks like, which again, we saw in the Treehouse footage earlier this year, I think it's pretty clear evidence that what's going to happen is everyone on planet Tanamar, Samus amongst the other troopers we've seen, and Sylux himself, are going to get transported from Tanamar to Viewros. And because I personally think time travel is involved, and I think that the artifact itself contains the power to transport things within time, that's why I think when everyone is transported from Tanamar in the beginning to Viewros later in the game, that they're not transported to a different planet in a different galaxy or solar system. They stayed on the planet they're on. They just happened to have gone to a different point in time. Now, this to me is such a freaking cool idea. And again, this whole video and conversation is literally, as the title suggests, it's a theory. So of course I can't tell you that I know this for a fact. A theory could always be proven wrong. I feel really darned good about my theory, but obviously I'm holding space for if it turns out to be wrong, and then, okay, fine, my guess was wrong. But when I look at all the evidence and the stuff I'm going to continue showing you guys and talking about, I feel like that's what's happening. On Tanamar, the artifact is activated during that showdown between Samus and Sylux, and then suddenly it explodes, and everything on planet Tanamar goes to planet Viewros, or in my opinion, goes to a different point in time on the same planet. The question, of course, then becomes, if that's true, do they go forward in time, or do they go backwards in time? And there's half of me that loves the idea of backwards in time, there's half of me that loves the idea of forwards in time. I feel like either is possible. I know that seeing all the jungle stuff maybe makes us think, of course, this has to be in the past, but there are other reasons to think it might be in the future. So truly, if there's even anything to this idea, I really think that they could be going in either direction with it, and I become extremely excited. So let's talk about and look at a couple of other pieces of evidence that I found that makes me feel pretty good about that theory. So there are three main bullet points, or talking points, pieces of evidence I've seen that makes me think that this could be true. We'll start with Exhibit A, and that's the fact that a lot of wreckage is found. Human-looking wreckage, Galactic Federation-looking wreckage is found and seen in a lot of the footage we've seen on planet Viewros in all of the trailers that they've released about surrounding Metroid Prime 4 so far. And a lot of that comes together simply because we've seen that 17-minute treehouse footage from the April Direct earlier this year, where we can see Galactic Federation ships and troops and buildings and vehicles and, most importantly, mechs. The big giant Galactic Federation mech that we see in that one battle where the fellow who's actually playing and demonstrating the game shows off the mouse controls for the Switch 2 for the first time. That big mech comes out of that door in the midst of a space pirate battle, and that exact mech and plenty of other pieces of Galactic Federation equipment found in this treehouse footage we can see under foliage and vines and, with all this overgrowth around it in footage on planet Viewros in some of these trailers. The other piece of evidence that is absolutely massive is some of the newest information we've gotten around this game, and yes, I know it's proven to be very divisive and controversial, and I get that. I'm not even talking about that stuff because I haven't watched any of the gameplay previews. I've only watched Nintendo's official overview trailer because that's my choice to avoid spoilers from people's gameplay. I only want to see what Nintendo puts out. But in that trailer, they confirmed that other Galactic Federation troopers are also on planet Viewros. So whether planet Viewros is a different planet or if it's the same planet at a different point in time like my theory, Samus gets transported to Viewros, as does other human Galactic Federation troopers. The whole cast of characters that we were introduced to in this last overview trailer and people also experienced in their gameplay previews last week, those characters are also on planet Viewros. That's interesting. Why would other people, not Samus, also be on planet Viewros? Well, to me, I just think that the entire planet, the vehicles, the ships, the mechs, the people, the troopers, Sylux himself, were all part of that explosion from the artifact, and that artifact sending everyone on planet Tanamar to a different point in time. Basically moving the planet to a different point in time, not the people and the inhabitants on the planet. Because when you think about just the people and the inhabitants on the planet getting moved because of the artifact, that's where you can say, oh, it just moved them from one planet to another planet in a different galaxy. But what probably happened is it moved the planet itself forward or backwards in time, which is why, of course, not only is Samus on planet Viewros, so are the other Galactic Federation troopers, and of course, per my theory, so would Sylux. And the third piece of evidence that I want to talk about is one that, in a few ways, could maybe help us understand if the planet got moved forward or backwards in time. And it has to do with the Lumorn themselves. We already know that in this journey, in this game, Samus will come across ancient Lumorn characters or people. We haven't seen any evidence of her talking to a living Lumorn that I can see. We see her talking to and interacting with what seem to be spirits or ghosts. They might be transmissions from a living Lumorn, maybe somewhere else, just not on the planet, but she's definitely talking to Lumorn that don't seem to be present right in front of her. So whatever they are, she's talking to some form of a Lumorn race person, and we've seen more than one shot in more than one location of her doing this, and we even get the indication that the psychic abilities are given to her by the Lumorn. That just seems to make the most sense. Now, on planet Viewros, wherever in time it is, whatever planet or galaxy it is, when she comes across the Lumorn, she's also coming across Lumorn statues, ancient Lumorn architecture, and even some of these tablets that we see her scanning that's actually feeding her some Lumorn lore. It's like the writings and the scribblings and the notations from the Lumorn that she scans and learns about who and what they were or are. My knee-jerk reaction and initial takeaway to everything happening with the Lumorn is that they're just no longer on the planet. Whatever's happening on Viewros, and again, wherever in time planet Viewros might be in this game, the Lumorn seem to be a race that used to be on the planet and no longer are. And they maybe used to be alive and are now completely extinct, like we used to think was the case with the Chozo back during Metroid Prime 1, but we've since learned that's not the case, and so that's fine. But maybe that's what's happening on Viewros with the Lumorn. Maybe she can only talk to the ghosts and spirits of the Lumorn because they're entirely extinct. Either way, it seems like they used to inhabit the planet, they haven't been on the planet for a long time, and so that makes us wonder, okay, did she go back in time? Did the artifact send planet Tanamaar back in time where it used to be called planet Viewros when the Lumorn inhabited it, but even hundreds or thousands of years before that, the Lumorn had vacated the planet, or the Lumorn became extinct, and so all of their ancient architecture is still there? Or did planet Viewros get sent way, way, way into the future, so that when you look at planet Tanamaar in the beginning of Metroid Prime 4, that's like present day. Within the timeline of Metroid, it's present day. The year 20x9, right? That's what we know. We'll call that the present day, when the Galactic Federation and humans basically inhabit planet Tanamaar. That they've got a base there, that UTO research station that we learned about, that's where they are. And then if the artifact is transporting us through a different point in time, either way in the past, there were no humans in Galactic Federation, or way in the future, there are no more humans and no more Galactic Federation. So all of the overgrowth and the different layout and architecture on planet Viewros might be different because thousands of years in the past or thousands of years in the future, the name of planet Tanamaar used to be or will become planet Viewros, and maybe all of this overgrowth and everything shows that everything got transported to a different point in time, but stayed on the same planet. And so again, to me, the Lumorn fits into kind of both sides of this theory. It just has to do with whether or not we're going to learn they used to be on the planet thousands of years ago and no longer are, or maybe in the thousands of years into the future that everyone gets transported to, we skip over the time frame where Tanamaar no longer is inhabited by the Galactic Federation and human beings, and over thousands of years gets taken over by the foliage and all the wreckage and everything that happens there, and eventually this race and this species called the Lumorn take over, and they build a life there, and then they leave, and way, way after they've left or become extinct in the future, that's the point in time that the artifact sends Samus and everyone on Viewros. This starts to become really crazy, right? You kind of get the Marty McFly, far out, man, this is heavy kind of feeling in your brain when you're trying to talk about time travel, especially as a theory that we don't even know is necessarily true. I mean, all the people trying to put together the Zelda timelines and the Breath of the Wild and the Tears of the Kingdom timelines with all the time travel, we all know what it's like to try to understand the order of events and try to describe it with our words. It's very, very difficult. So I hope that this doesn't sound like gobbledygook the way I've explained it. But I think that these three main pieces of evidence that I've talked about helps showcase why I think this is the main crux of the story in Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. And of course, like I said, there is a chance that the time travel thing isn't true, and the artifact is set off in the beginning by mistake, right? An unexpected disaster, as the narrator of the overview trailer said. Sylux and Samus are fighting, and Sylux shoots the artifact. Now, Sylux wanted the artifact, so that's something worth noting too. Maybe Sylux, who has a vendetta against Samus and a vendetta against the Galactic Federation, is like, that artifact they have can send me back in time. And maybe if I get that artifact and go back in time, I can stop the Galactic Federation from ever existing. And hell, maybe I can stop Samus from ever being born. You know, maybe these are his motivations. We don't know his motivations other than he wants that artifact. And if the artifact is a time travel device, a black hole creating device or something that has to do with black holes and time travel and all this weird existential cosmic stuff that I am not smart enough to describe and talk about, then it would make sense that he would want it, because he's a bad guy who doesn't like Samus or the Federation. So give me that artifact so I can take you all down and get ultimate power and control the space pirates and control the Metroids and just control the universe. That's probably what he thinks he can do with that artifact. But again, he shoots it by mistake, sets it off by mistake. And this all came to be when I watched that opening cutscene from the treehouse, and I'm like, okay, we know the game starts on a planet called Tanamar, which, by the way, is new. It's a new addition, a new planet named in Metroid Prime 4. So we're in the Desolan system. That's also new. We're on planet Tanamar, and then we see this artifact get activated, and then we understand that the whole point of the story is that Samus gets transported to a mysterious planet Viewros and has to get back. And so just by that description of the plot alone, and watching that opening cutscene where Psylocke shoots the artifact, it's like, clearly we're watching the artifact be the thing that sends Samus to planet Viewros. Why would an artifact take a person on one planet and then move them to another planet? That doesn't make sense. To me, Samus and the artifact, okay, this is what we're doing. Samus and the artifact are on planet Tanamar. The artifact goes off. Why would it just send Samus over here? The artifact going off when both Samus and the artifact are on the same planet, to me, just takes the whole planet and moves it somewhere. And I don't think it moves it to a different location. It moves it somewhere in time. Again, it gets really kooky and nutty when you start to describe it, but I think, hopefully, fingers crossed, I've done a pretty good job of explaining why I believe this theory and explaining why it makes sense if you look at all the evidence and the pieces spread across all the trailers and all the footage we've seen so far. So I think that's all I have to say in trying to describe and discuss and dissect my theory. It'll be very interesting to see what the actual truth is, because as I've said several times, I'm keeping space to be wrong here. And I don't even care if I am wrong. I just think it's neat to look at this stuff and put the pieces together and come up with the theory that I have, because as I said at the beginning, I think it's a cool idea. I like the idea of introducing time travel into the Metroid series. I think it works organically within like the sci-fi nature of the setting and the story anyway, and the Psylocke and the artifact elements of it all just seems to come together. We go from Tanamar to Viewros. Why are we jumping from solar system to solar system? I just think we're jumping into different points in time. So this is what I think. In 2 weeks, we're going to have our answer when we finally have this game in our hands and get to play it. So, of course, I want to hear what you guys think about my theory. If you agree, if you disagree, if you meet somewhere in the middle with this idea, talk about and share your thoughts below. 2-week countdown begins today. Thank you guys, as always, for watching and listening, and I will see you on the next video.